The obvious question now is that if tarot has no occult origin, how on earth did it become so heavily associated with occultism and fortune-telling? This story begins towards the end of the 18th century with a Parisian occultist, Anton Coeur de Gébelin. There are three major factors to consider. First of all, the game of tarot, while once very popular in France, had at that time fallen out of favour, and was being played only in some rural areas. In the cities, a generation or more had probably never seen a game of tarot. Secondly, there was Egyptomania, a fad for all things Egyptian. And thirdly, Gébelin had been publishing an encyclopedia, one expounding his theory that all cultures ultimately had a common origin in an ancient and advanced civilization. He had by this time published several volumes already, and it was heavily subscribed, driving his need to find new material. This is when he found the tarot pack. He tells a story of a country visit where he saw a game of tarot being played. Tarot being new and exotic to his eyes, he claims to have immediately recognized them to be the wisdom of the ancient Egyptian priests, codified in a game to preserve it from the book-burning hordes, and brought to Europe by the gypsies. He made no effort to support his fairy tale with any evidence, but goes on to explain that the name tarot is derived from two ancient Egyptian words, tar and ro, meaning royal road. If this weren't enough, he published a simpler method for using the cards in divination. Of course, not only is there no evidence of tarot's imagery in ancient Egypt, but the story contradicts the evidence that we have for their origins. We have known for a long time now that the gypsies did not come from Egypt, but from the Indian subcontinent. And finally, if we needed confirmation of Gébelin's dishonesty, he was writing before the Rosetta Stone was decoded. So at that time no one knew any ancient Egyptian, and we can confirm now that the words tar and ro do not exist in the ancient Egyptian lexicon. But he was not the first, nor by any means the last occultist, to invent his own erudition. Our next key figure in this story was a 19th century fortune-teller who worked under the name Attila. He is attributed with having first coined the term cartomancy for fortune-telling with playing cards, something he made a living from both practicing and teaching. He saw in Gébelin's work an excellent business opportunity and developed a more detailed system of meanings and occult correspondences, which he published along with some heavily redesigned cards. This helped spread and popularize the idea of tarot for divination. Rejecting Attila's fortune-telling, another occultist, calling himself Eliphas Levi, decided that the cards represented the Kabbalah, the tree of life. His claim was based on the coincidence of numbers. If you take the Fool to be a part of the Trump sequence, which it wasn't, then you have 22 cards, and there are 22 paths in the tree of life. Remember the story of the man caught playing with a pack of cards in church? It's as substantial as that. A contemporary of Levi, calling himself Paul Christian, is also worth noting. He claimed to have read the works of Iamblichus, a Neoplatonist philosopher, at the British Library, and on his return to France published a translation of part of it. This told of an initiation ritual in the Egyptian priesthood, and described a series of stone tablets that reflected the images of the tarot trumps. This claim is often repeated or alluded to even today. It is found in the literature supplied as the standard with all Fournier tarot packs. However, when he was writing, his readership would have had little chance of checking his translation. Only 2 copies of the text existed in Latin, one at the British Library and the other in Rome. Today, however, Iamblichus is widely studied in philosophy courses, and his work is freely available in a number of translations, any one of which will confirm that Paul Christian was a liar. So, for about 100 years, the idea of an occult tarot was limited only to France. But at the end of the 19th century, a group of British occultists began to translate the writings of Eliphas Levi and Paul Christian and import tarot cards. These people were the founders of the magical order of the Golden Dawn, who invented a magic system based around the tarot and, in so doing, changed some of the suit signs and trump names to those that we are familiar with. Batons were changed to wands in a comical move. Coins became pentacles. Levi had decided that coins should be talismans, and he called them pantacles. The Golden Dawn members then mistranslated this to pentacles. The English-speaking world had no remembered history of tarot cards, and so people's first experience of them was as occult objects, and the claim of an occult origin, or at least an origin at the hands of occultists, seemed to have been accepted without question. While France returned to playing the game of tarot, Britain and the United States saw an explosion of popular myths in books, magazines, television programs and movies. Gradually, the occult tarot began to be exported back into continental Europe, a very different animal to the one that left it. Because tarot is known by other names in Europe such as tarot and tarocchi, and because the designs used for gameplay are now dramatically different, the traditional cards had now become novel and exotic. It is often pointed out that propaganda does not require a conspiracy, only market forces. While many of the occultists behind the promotion of tarot have probably believed their stories in some way, the media machine that continues to push them is driven by profit. Today, most people when asked about tarot will think of them as essentially occult objects and the tools of fortune tellers. Even on forums dedicated to skepticism, they are perceived this way and dismissed as such. For a long time, occultists and fortune tellers were allowed something of a monopoly on the use and origins of tarot, at least in the English-speaking world. While work had been done previously by Gertrude Moakley, it was not until the 1980 publication of Michael Dumet's Game of Tarot that an academic challenge was made against the dominant myths. This book presented a researched and referenced account of the history of tarot's origins, of the games played with them, and of the occultist appropriation. While it had only a single printing, having sold badly, it still existed as a damning and embarrassing attack on the myths that had been peddled for so long. Gradually, thanks to the internet, Dumet's account of tarot's origins began to reach greater and greater numbers until it became difficult for some occultists to ignore or disregard without some answer. The need to make some response became ever more pressing, with further publications giving greater detail on the development of the occult tarot, which served to highlight the absurdity of it all.